So just to get started, first off, welcome everybody to this eForm training. If you're not familiar with eForms, this may not be the training for you, but this will be a really good, just kind of basic overview of what eForms are going to be like in campus, because it's quite a bit different than how they are now. A few things before we get started. So I did go ahead and set our settings so that everyone would be muted on entry. So if you need to speak for some reason, please unmute yourself, but please try to stay on mute if at all possible, just so we can minimize background noise for everyone else. If you do have questions, we've found in these trainings that the chat function is great. So you can either send a message to everyone or you can send a message just to me, whatever you're more comfortable with. And I will be checking on those periodically throughout the training and answer those along the way. So just a really quick overview of what we'll be covering. We're going to review the general eForm submission process today, as well as supplemental documentation. We would have expected you to take Campus 101 and Campus 201. Campus Trading Partner training is not necessarily a prerequisite for this. It just is one that might be helpful as well. So just to kind of run through our agenda today, these are the main topics that we are going to cover. So I'm not going to go super in depth with a lot of these, but I do want to make sure that you're walking away with at least a decent understanding of what you're going to need to do the first time you come into campus and you need to submit one of these filings. So jumping right into it, EDI, documentation, and edits. So if you all reference your emails, I sent you a link. If you click on that link, it is going to take you to a page that looks just like this. This is our EDI page for a DLI. This is going to have a lot of the information relevant to EDI and eForms. Right here, these are going to be some of the main documents that you're going to use as you're going through and actually submitting these files to us. So I specifically wanted to call out a few of these just because I know some of them are very confusing and very technical documents if you've had a chance to look at them, but there are a few that will probably be of particular importance to you all as eForm filers. First off is our implementation guide. So this is going to have a lot of materials in it. It's going to go through just some general rules, some IIBC things. The most important part for you all is probably going to be this section 4, our master edit requirements. I'm just going to go ahead and scroll down to page 13 and give you an idea of those. So these master edit requirements are essentially going to tell you what you can and cannot enter into these eForm fields. For a lot of you that are doing eFroys right now, it might not seem all that different, but we do have some different edits in place. So at least for the first little while, you might want to just have this handy if you're having trouble figuring out what needs to go into one of the fields that you're looking at on your eForms. This is quite a few pages. We do have all of the Froy edits, and then we have the Froy edits below in another table. So it looks a little overwhelming, but really we wanted to create this so that it was easy for you to quickly identify and edit issue or something that you may be having with one of these eForm fields. The next document that I wanted to share with you all is a Form 2 MTC crosswalk. So this is a document that I would highly recommend kind of keeping in hand, especially for the first little while. This has a full table of EDI or eForm maintenance codes over here. It gives a little bit of a definition of what that maintenance type code actually means, and then the current form equivalent. So obviously this is a huge change. We're going from these paper forms to these all electronic submissions. This is definitely what something you're going to want to have handy so that you can reference it quickly. So I won't go through all of these, but I did send this document your way. So please feel free to peruse it and send any questions that you may have. Additionally, this covers our supplemental web form submissions. So in addition to these eForm submissions that you're going to be sending that are EDI equivalents, we do have a handful of supplemental web form submissions. So it's our discontinuance web form, dependency web form, benefit addendum web form, and PPD follow-up web form. I will be going a little bit more in depth with these later on in the presentation, but just wanted to let you know that that information is available to you all. And getting back into my PowerPoint. So in addition to our implementation guide that I just covered, as well as these little supplemental documents, we do have our element requirement table, our edit matrix, and our event table. I did send you another document. So it's the other PDF that I sent you. You can view all of those documents on the EDI page on the DLI website. But I know that they're very confusing. We as an EDI team knew that they were very confusing and they can be very technical. So just created a very simple high-level overview of what each document has, when you may need to use it. For the most part, I think you all will be mostly looking at the Minnesota implementation guide. The only other table that you may be looking at fairly frequently would be the edit matrix, the sequencing tabs. That just tells you what order the maintenance type codes would need to come in Minnesota in order to be valid. So then the final thing I wanted to discuss was TRs versus TEs. This is likely not going to be as impactful for you all since you do not submit EDI filings, but we are moving from an error, an accepted with errors model, to a rejection model when data is incorrect. Now, basically what this means, there's a nice advantage for all of you with this. Basically, you won't be able to submit if there's an error on your transaction, and you'll get messages telling you what those errors are. I'll show an example of that here when I go through an eFroy, but it's kind of nice because you guys are getting that information in real time. A lot of the EDI users have to wait after they've submitted it, it's been validated, and then it goes back to them. So you are getting that information in real time. So you effectively cannot submit things with errors, and an error by saying errors, I mean things that do not meet our edits. So any questions before I hop into the system and show you a little bit? All right. Just go ahead and pull up Campus. So this is our campus login. For those of you who've been through 101 or 201 trainings, you have likely already seen this. For those of you who have not been through those trainings, this is just our basic sign-in page. I'm not going to go through the sign-up process, but I do want to go through a few things that you also may have covered in those previous trainings. So your sign-in is always going to be your email address and whatever password you choose. We have just standard access requirements acknowledgement for getting into the system. And since I'm a trading partner, which means I'm someone who submits these transactions on behalf of an insurance company, or multiple insurance companies, it's going to take me to this trading partner dashboard. So there's a few things here that are really important. You can see here that I have this little drop down that says Twin Lakes Insurance Group. If for some reason I was part of multiple trading partner groups, and I'll show groups in just a moment here, I would be able to see them all in this drop down. I have my notifications here. So this would just have a number by it if you do have a notification. Your notifications will also show up just right down here. These are usually just minor things saying, hey, this has happened, or your form has been approved, your form has been submitted, things like that. I also have the ability to go up, find my name up here, and click this drop down. I can edit my own profile, I could log out, but what I want to show you guys is the My Groups tab. So you can see here, I am a part of 3 different groups. A lot of you will probably be a part of multiple groups, especially if you're working in this trading partner capacity. You will probably be part of an insurer or self-insurer group, possibly a TPA group, and then obviously your trading partner group. So you can see here, I'm in all these groups, and that means that I can take actions on filings for all of these different entities: Twin Lakes Insurance, Twin Lakes Insurance Group, and Twin Lakes Claims. Now I also have the ability to update my trading partner profile right in Canvas. So right now, you go to the DLI website, you fill out a form, it gets submitted, and our compliance staff reviews it. Similar process in the future. The difference is just in the system and what's being asked. So you can see here, I have my insurance group is already set up here. I've got my addresses, I have my relationships. If I click update my profile, it will take me to the actual trading partner profile submission application. So since I've already entered all of this information, I'm not going to make any changes. But if I did make changes, so let's say I needed to change the companies or a contact, I could do all of that right here. So say I wanted to add another company that I am working as a TPA on behalf of. Select Campus Insurance Group here. I just need to sign and attest, and then I can submit that form. If I click this My Form History tab, it will take me back to the page, my home page. And if I go to my form history, I can see that trading partner registration that I just submitted that is pending review. Now, once compliance reviews that, they might be in touch if there are questions about something, but if they can approve it, you'll get this little notification here saying that it has been approved. There's a few other pieces of information on this dashboard. A lot of these may not be as useful just because you all are not going to have rejected transactions. Your transactions will be 100%. So for EDI trading partners, this would show accepted versus rejected, but you guys are lucky and you're always going to have accepted if you're eForm partners. We do have the average days for an employer to notify the claim admin. This just tells you out of your claims the average number of days from when the employer had knowledge of a disability to when the claim admin had knowledge of the injury. Mine says 0 right now because I've only filed 1 claim on this account and they were all the same day. So that's why these are both at 0. New claims, claims with benefits, and claims awaiting benefits. Any claims that you had awaiting benefits, or first actions would be here, the numbers. And then if I go down to my tabs, I can see any claims that I have submitted or first actions that I've submitted for any insurers. If I'm working with multiple insurers, I could choose all, I could choose some. I'm just going to leave the default to all since I'm only associated to one right now. You can see this submission for Scott Thompson that I put in earlier today. So just to jump back into the slides here, the last thing I wanted to show you was our action buttons. That actually goes a little bit better with the next piece of the training, which is submitting Froys. So these are the Froy transactions that will be available to be submitted in Minnesota. We have the 00, the UI, the AQ, the AU, the Froy 02, and the Froy UR. I am going to cover the URs a little bit separately just because those are unique. But for these others, I would highly recommend, again, looking at that form to MTC crosswalk to get a little bit better idea of what each of these transactions means. For the most part, those of you who are writing new business or still have new claims, you'll be starting most of your claims with the 00. If you are someone who is no longer writing in Minnesota and you're just kind of reporting on supplemental claims, you likely will not be reporting Froys at all after the Froy UR. And a very good question. Is UI only for asbestos? It is. There are specific edits related to the UI, and we were also able to scale back those the injury types. So that one is very specific, and there are specific edits to those UIs, so you can report asbestosis claims using that. Any questions about these Froys before we move over and submit one? All right. So back in my system here. I need to submit a Froy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click this submit eForm or web form button. It's going to ask me what I want to do. I'm going to say that I want to file a new claim. Now, just to touch on that question that we just had, if I want to submit to an asbestosis claim or submit a UI, I would click Submit ASB UI under investigation. But for the most part, you'll be doing this Submit New Claim, which will take you to the 00. All right. So this will take you to a blank first report of injury. So a few things to note. Anything with an asterisk is going to be required. And then if you enter something that is incorrect, so let's say for employee SSN, I just started entering letters, try to enter letters, it's not even going to let you do it. If I entered, see what else. If I entered a date that was prior to the date of injury or something, once we get down into our dates, it will tell me immediately, get this red text like this, letting me know that that's not right, I need to fix it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and fill this out like I would if I had gotten a new claim. Now, when you get to the employee ID section, you do have the option to choose social security number, which is what you will be using most of the time. If you do not have a social security number for the individual that you are submitting the claim on, you can contact the department and we will actually generate what is called a PIN for you. It's just a placeholder for those SSNs if we don't have them, or if it's something that we don't have right now, we can put that placeholder PIN in place. If you are going to submit using a PIN, you'll just need to make sure that it is that employee ID type is specified as department assigned PIN. I'm just going to go ahead and use a social security number. I've got a few more fields required here. So you'll notice sometimes too, like with this employer one, as soon as I clicked employer, you'll see accident site organization name became a required field. So if things are conditionally required, they may get an asterisk next to them after you click on something else. The system will call that out if you for some reason miss one, it'll let you know before you submit it. So employer information, I'm going to run through my employer information now. Something to keep in mind if you are in a situation where you're denying a claim or it's considered uninsured, you don't have coverage for it, the employer fee is conditional on whether or not there is coverage. So if it's something that you need to deny and there's no coverage, you can certainly leave out that employer fee or insured fee, since we would not want to consider them an insured since they're not insured. And one more thing here. I'm skipping over a lot of these fields because they're not required. However, you may populate whatever you want to populate on the first round. I know that there are some things that display here that are optional on the first report of injury and then are not optional on subsequent reports of injury. So if you do enter them on the first report of injury, they will typically just pull right through to your subsequent report of injury. So just something to keep in mind. If you want to type in more information, that's certainly fine. Now I've got my insurer information, just my insurer fee and my insurer name. So for insurer type, a few of you are going to have be self-insured, a few of you are going to be insurers. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to show what it would look like as an insurer, but I'm also going to call out a few things along the way that self-insured employers may not need to complete. All right, so now we're in the claim admin information. I'm gonna go ahead and put the claim administrator claim number. So this is the claim number that would be assigned by you all. You can add the claim administrator contact information on the Froy if you'd like. That is an example of something that we don't require on the Froy, but we do require it on the Shroys. So if you have that and you want to put that in at the beginning, you can certainly do that on the Froy and it will carry over. So since I put myself as an insurer entity, I'm going to put in my policy information. Now, something to keep in mind, if you are self-insured, you may not have a policy, and that is fine. The way our edits are set up is that this information would only be required if the insurer type is insurer. So self-insureds, if you don't have a policy that you keep track of, if you don't have that information, don't worry about it. You will not have to enter it. I think that there was a question. Is the industry code the SIC code or the NAIC code? And you know what? I'm going to have to check on that because I always get the two messed up. It's the 6-digit one. I think that they are the SIC codes. I'm not sure. I think it is there anybody from compliance on who can confirm that?
I'll look into that, Angie, and get back to you. It's been a while since I've looked at it as well, but I'll find it.
Yeah, that's something I've never been able to keep straight in all my time working in claims. So I can never remember which one's the 4 and which one's the 6, but we will get that question answered. And then I just had another question, where's the claim number created from? So the claim number would be whatever claim number your agency assigns to the claim. So I think Sharon, you were the one who answered or asked that question. We can go over that specifically because I know you all in the fund will have a little bit different process for that.
Can I jump back in?
Yeah.
It is the valid 6-digit NAICS code, so the NAICS code. And I know on their website you can find their most up-to-date list with those codes in there, but that's what it needs to be.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. So moving along here, I'm going to go ahead and put in my date of injury. I'm going to put that this is an open claim. And then I'll select the claim type code. So this is very important. In Minnesota, if you have any lost time at all or any claimed lost time, you should be marking it as either indemnity with no lost time, beyond the waiting period, lost time, no paid indemnity, became lost time, or lost time indemnity. The only time you should really be marking it as a medical only claim in Minnesota is if there was truly no claims last time due to the injury at all. So in those situations, you don't even usually have to report it to us. So most of the time, we're probably gonna be looking for I as our claim type code here, indemnity last time. And we do have these sections here where you can put in managed care information if you work with a company who deals with employers that have managed care. You can add witnesses if you have them. Now in the employment section, I'm just going to go ahead and complete all this information. So these fields are not required on the first report of injury, but if you have them, I would recommend just completing them because this is another thing that will pull over to that Troy. Yes, this form is replacing the current eFroy. And type of loss. Most of the time for type of loss, this is something that confuses people sometimes. Most of the time it's going to be traumatic injury. The only time that you're really going to have occupational disease or cumulative trauma is if you're dealing with like asbestosis or like if you had like a COVID claim that was related to work, you could put that as an occupational disease. And then cumulative trauma is going to be more your carpal tunnel, things that you don't have a specific start date, don't have a specific date of injury necessarily, but you know about when the symptoms began. I have one more question here. And I'm actually gonna let Melissa field this one because she is the person who taught me how to teach people this. Just so I understand correctly, do we have to report lost time claims that do not exceed the waiting period?
Sure. So if there's no claimed lost time outside the waiting period, then you would report it in the cases where there's indemnity paid. So like PPD might be paid, even if it's not a claimed lost time claim outside the waiting period. And then starting in campus with the law changes that came into effect, if there is rehab or litigation, there will also be a need to report those. So you'll be required to file a Froy on those files as well. If none of those things apply and it's a medical only where there's literally no lost time or claims lost time, or if all claims lost time is within the waiting period and the other situations do not apply, you do not need to file it.
Thank you, Melissa. There was one more question here too. Once we start entering employers over and over, will the system remember and auto-populate? So our system is not set up to do that. If you have any kind of like Google that remembers those things, you could certainly try and do that in addition. But what'll happen is after you enter this information on the first report of injury, what you enter will carry over to your subsequent reports of injury, but it wouldn't necessarily populate on a totally new date of injury for a totally new person. There is a difference with the update reports, so I'll show you that when we get to those, but most of that information will already be pre-populated for you. All right, moving along. So part of body injured. So I'm going to go ahead here. I'm going to put in wrist. Now, since it's an extremity, I can add right, left, bilateral. And then short accident description. So now we get into our key dates section. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory, but I just want to make sure if there are any questions about these that you please do ask. So we'll start with the date the employer had knowledge of the injury. So in this case, I think my date of injury was 8/1, so I'm going to go ahead and put 8/1/2020. Date claim administrator had knowledge of injury. That's probably a couple days later. Those can definitely be the same day though. First day of disability after the waiting period. Now this is a particularly important field because it's a little bit confusing, but it's important because we want to make sure that it's understood correctly. So the first day of disability after the waiting period is exactly that. It's the first day after the waiting period has occurred. So let's just say here, I'm going to skip that one right now, and I'm going to go to my initial date disability began. I'm going to go ahead and say that my initial date disability began was the date of injury. So since my initial date disability began was on the date of injury, wasn't a full day of lost time. This is a pop quiz. Does anybody know? Do we count that as day one in Minnesota?
I think I heard someone say yes.
Okay.
And I was going to say that person wins, so.
Whoever said yes wins. Okay. Yeah, Tammy, I see you now. So yes, if the initial date of disability occurred on the date of injury, that is day one, even if it is not a full day. We're a little unique in Minnesota in that regard. Then if we're looking at the first day of disability after the waiting period, let's say in this case that she didn't go back to work right away. She was off work for over a week in this situation. So day one is 8/1. Day 2 is 8/2. Day 3 is 8/3. Doesn't matter if she was scheduled to work those days. Doesn't matter if all that really matters is 3 calendar days and is the time due to the time that she is missing due to the injury. So even if she's not scheduled, we count the calendar days. We don't count scheduled days or work days. So our first day of disability after the waiting period, since we know the first was the initial date, second, third would be 8/4. So continuing along here, I'm going to go ahead and put 8/1 as my initial last date worked because that's the initial date disability began and the date of injury. Now I want to show you an example here of what the system would do if you put in an erroneous date. So let's say initial date employer had knowledge of date of disability. I decided that I was going to put 7/31. It's going to tell me, you can't do that. It has to be greater than today, the day that you're submitting this, or less than today, the day that you're submitting this, and has to be greater than or equal to the date of injury. Since my date of injury was 8/1, 7/31 would not be valid. I would not be able to submit this form with 7/31. So I'm going to go ahead and put 8/1. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to skip over the rest of these dates. I won't put the return to work information in on this one since this is just our first report of injury. But another important field here, if you have a situation where the initial date disability began and the date of injury are the same, we want to know if full wages were paid for that day. So for this situation, I'm just going to put yes. And the reason we want to know that is because if they weren't, we would potentially be looking for a TPD payment on your end. So everything looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and click submit. And now I can see that my claim has been submitted. So it takes me to this eFroy successfully submitted page, gives me a confirmation number. You would also get an email that has that confirmation number. That can sometimes be helpful if you're contacting the department for some reason and we need a confirmation number to look something up. It's also good for you to have just to have proof that you filed it. I also have this link here to the My Form history. So if I click, it takes me back. You go down to My Form history, and now it's going to show the things that I filed. So click this. We can see this first report of injury that I just submitted for Aubrey. Now, if I want to print the document that is generated from that first report of injury, go to the JCN here for my actions. And it's going to take me to her claim details page. And I think this was covered pretty in depth in 101 and 201. So I'm going to go ahead and just go to the bottom here and show you guys where the documents live. So you come here, you'll see we have this document. You can either click on it and open it if you want, or you can download it right from there. And you'll see we've generated a document with the first report of injury with all the good rules and regulations and instructions on the back. You could go ahead and download this document or print it right from here, that you can put a copy in the mail to the injured worker. Any questions about the first report submissions? All right. And moving right along, I will go ahead and go to the Troy submissions. So for Froy submissions, this is another one that I'm going to encourage you to look really closely at that form to MTC crosswalk, just for reference, especially at first. We have a ton of Troy MTCs here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but that guide will be pretty critical for you at least starting up, just to make sure that you understand what is replacing each form. So what I do want to go through today with the suspensions, or not suspensions, the Shroys, is the initial payment and the suspension transactions. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to Campus. There's a couple ways that I can navigate to submit that Shroy form to follow up my Froy form. So I can click the button up in the corner, ask me what I want to do. So in this instance, I'm going to go ahead and click Submit to an existing claim instead. So what this will do is it'll give me a dropdown of the claims that I have submitted at least a first report of injury on. I'm going to go ahead and stick with Aubrey here. And I am going to do an initial payment. So the initial payment, while we're waiting for this to load, is one of the maintenance type codes that is replacing our NOPLD. So a lot of you, this is definitely going to look new, but this is something that a lot of you will probably get pretty familiar with, especially if you're issuing those initial payments pretty frequently. So just give it a second here, and it will preload most of our data. I do have a question here while we're waiting. Will this training and the slides be available for viewing again? Yes, I'm recording, so I will be able to post this training with the rest of our trainings. This just taking a little longer than normal. Keep in mind that we are in the test system, so still not 100% in our production system, so there can sometimes be slowness. But as you can see here, it did populate most of Aubrey's information. So we've got her first and last name, date of birth, her WID. So that would have been assigned to her after we submitted that first report of injury. It carried over her marital status. So it's great. This whole first section, nothing new that we have to enter unless we are submitting a fatality claim for some reason. If there are any concurrent employers, we would see them right here, or we could add them right here. Same with any dependents. So if we had dependent payee relationships, move into the claim details. You'll see everything came over again. Our employer fees, insurer fees, insured fee. Claim admin information came over. Claim number came over. The only thing that we need to do in this section is add our claim administrator's contact information. All right, all of our employment details carried over. The one difference is that you do have to enter your average wage again. The reason is because the The data elements, are just slightly different from the Froy to the Shroy. So we'll go ahead and we'll just add that average wage. Wage effective date. This should be your date of injury. If it's an estimated gross weekly amount, you can indicate that by this drop down. I'm going to say no because I can figure out what it is. So 800 would be our comp amount. We have a pre-existing disability code data element that comes up on the Shroy. I'm going to go ahead and put no. At this point, I don't have any permanent impairment, so I'm going to skip over those. You can see all my dates carried over from that first report of injury that I had submitted. I don't have a return to work yet, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave the rest of these blank for now. Now, if I get to benefit and payment details, I'm going to go ahead and click this plus sign to add a benefit record. Select my benefit type code. I'm going to go ahead and select temporary total since this individual is fully off work. Her gross weekly amount is $800 and the effective date for that is 8/1/2020. Most of the time these are going to be the date of injury, the gross and net weekly amount effective dates. The only time that those would really change is if there are adjustments that are made later on, and you would have to report that to us differently. So like if there were COLA adjustments or Social Security, you'd be looking more or less probably at some of those more involved perm total claims or dependency benefit claims for a lot of those. My benefit period start date, go ahead and do 8/2 since we already indicated that her wages were going to be paid by her employer. Let's go ahead and do 2 weeks of benefits here. She paid 2 weeks, 0 days, and her total amount paid is $1,600. We're going to want to put here the benefit payment issue dates. Let's say I am issuing this on 8/19/2020. And so that's the benefit segment. I'm going to move on to the payment segment, but I want to pause and answer some questions really quickly. Okay, so if someone files the Froy, but then someone else needs to file a Shroy, will that person that originally did not submit the Froy have access to submit a Shroy? Yes, so as long as that person is part of your trading partner group, they can definitely come in and they can submit that Shroy transaction. It does not have to be the same person. They would just need to be associated. There was another question just about where training materials will be posted. I will get that information specifically for you. I'm not 100% sure of the I'm trying to think that the link where the training team has the materials, but I can get that information and send it out to this group. You please share the link for the campus login page. I can send a link for what will be our address on 8/31. I just need to get that information from the proper people, but I can certainly provide that. Concurrent employer, is this if the injured employee had a second job? Yes, that's exactly what that would be used for. Thank you, Melissa. If the average weekly wage changes once we receive a wage history, are we required to change it in the system? If so, how? So that is a good question. So if you have to recalculate the average weekly wage for some reason, you can submit to us what is called a change amount transaction. And in that you can just update your average weekly wage information. How should we report a benefit payment date if a company's payroll is behind beyond the 14-day requirement? I believe that you are specifically talking about temporary partial disability, probably in that case. So if it's a situation where you're waiting on wages, you think that there's lost time potentially beyond the waiting period, but you're not sure. What it is in our current world is you would file the NOPLD, and Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's a box 2B that says that you're waiting on wages from the
Yep.
employer.
It's oh yep. It's
Yeah.
You're right. It's 2B.
Okay. So in the future, what you can do is you can submit what's called a PD transaction, and you can put in the narrative awaiting benefit confirmation from employer, or awaiting wage information from employer to determine if temp partial is due. Does the system automatically calculate the number of weeks covered given the start and stop dates? It does not. You would still need to enter that information in. And doesn't the first payment have to be issued within 14 days? Yeah, the first payment does need to be issued within 14 days. However, there are some caveats with temp partial and compliance. Melissa, if you want to go over those.
So that's not actually changing. It's the same that it is now before campus, in that we know that you guys are waiting on wage statements sometimes to make those payments, and we certainly don't expect you to make a payment before you know what you need to pay. So in the case of temp partial, like today, you'd say that box 2A, hey, we're accepting this claim, but we're not making a payment yet. We're waiting on the wage loss verification. It's the same thing with the partial denial. You're saying, hey, we're accepting this as of right now. We're not making a payment because we're waiting for that wage loss verification. And then you need to make that payment once the wage loss verification is received. So that actually hasn't changed, just the form in which you report it has.
Thanks, Melissa. All right, so we've covered this benefit segment. I'm going to move down to this payment segment. Now the payment segment, you would do this on an IP, obviously, because you're showing your initial payment, and we need your initial payment dates. For the payee, I'm just going to type in our employee. Oh, I can't remember if that was her name. Aubrey Johnson. 1600. And then this is going to cover 8/2 through 8/15. I'll put my benefit payment issue date. Now, if I needed to make more payments, let's say this was a fatality claim and I needed to make a funeral payment, I could add that to the other benefit type here. You could do that all in the same form. You don't have to do that in multiple forms. So scrolling back down, full wages paid for date of injury, we've already done that. Employer paid salary in lieu of compensation, that's just asking us, did the employer continue wages? In this case, we know that the answer is no. We don't need to worry about award order date, reduced benefit amount codes, overpayment amounts for this one, because this is our very first Froy. And then we have our benefit, adjustment, credit, and redistribution segments here. These will be more if you need to offset due to like Social Security, or trying to think of what else. Social Security is a big one for PTD. Sometimes you may need to show that you're taking a credit because you have an overpayment, things like that. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna click submit. And it looks like we hit all the fields we needed. I'll just take it a few seconds here to validate that all the information is correct. And it'll let me know that my report has been submitted. So again, if I want to see that, I can go back in here. I go ahead and I'm going to click this claim that I've got down here for Aubrey. Takes me back to her page. I go back to the bottom and I look at my Documents tab now. I'm going to have a first report of injury that we looked at earlier, and also my Notice of Insurer's Primary Liability Determination, outlining the payment that I just made. And I know this is super teeny tiny. It's very similar to our current NOPLD. And you can do the same here. You can just print this off or download it. All right, moving right along. So since we're back on Aubrey's page, I wanted to show you an additional navigation path for submitting these eForms. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to submit a suspension transaction for Aubrey. Now, instead of going all the way back out to my dashboard, since I'm already on her page, I can click this button here that says Submit eFroy/web form, submit to existing claim, and it's automatically going to know that this is the claim that I'm on. So I don't have to choose the claim that I need to submit to, like we did on the dashboard. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do an SX, a full suspension on this one. This will probably take a couple minutes here to load. Shouldn't happen in production, but since I'm in the test system, sometimes it does take a little bit longer for things to load. And this will do the exact same thing as my last Froy did. It's going to pull through that information that I entered, that I don't have to retype it. So for the most part, for this particular maintenance type code, I'll really only need to update my benefits. I'll need to put in my suspension reason code and suspension date. And then I'll also need to update any return to work dates if that's applicable to the suspension. So while that first report of injury seemed a little daunting to get through all those fields, it's definitely a lot easier once you get into those subsequent reports of injury because so much of the information is already provided for you. I'm going to scroll down and you can see all of this saved from where I was. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say that we're suspending her benefits. And I'm going to, let's say she had one more week here. I'm going to update these numbers. I'm going to update my benefit payment issue date. Actually going to change that to 20. Don't have to do a payment segment for this one, but what we will need to do is our suspension information. So if she was being suspended for a return to work, you would go ahead and fill out all of this return to work information. I'm going to go ahead though and say that she is being suspended because of medical noncompliance or because of some other reason other than return to work, so that I can show you guys the subsequent form that goes along with this. I'm going to go ahead and put 8, 22, and 20. Mention reason code. I'll put that she returned to work, but then I'm going to put did declined light duty offer. So I misspoke. So since I'm going to use that, I am going to go ahead and put a released return to work date here. I am not sure. Looks like I might have a bug with my return to work date here, which is good that we caught it. I'm going to go ahead and just clear this information out. It looks like that date can be equal to the date that you're filing this. For some reason, it's not allowing that. It's saying it wants to be before that, so I'll make sure that that gets noted. And after I press submit, my suspension has been created. I'm going to pause here and I'm going to look at the questions. So will campus have all of the pre-existing claims set up in the system? If so, when we need to file subsequent forms, will we be able to find them? So Lisa, that's actually what I'm going to go over next when we run through the URs. So now that we've filed, we saw how to file an IP, suspension, a first report of injury. I know something that is going to be really, really important to you all, especially at the beginning here, is filing our update reports. So I just want to go through a couple general guidelines for URs. So any claims filed with the department prior to 8/31/2020 will require either a Froy UR or both a Froy and Shroy UR before any other EDI transactions can be submitted. A Froy UR has to be accepted before the Shroy UR can be submitted. If a claim has not had a Froy submitted to the department prior to 8/31/2020, a UR is not needed. So if you have a, if you're kind of in this kind of gray area right now where we're not going to be accepting EDI transactions for a few days and you can't file that 00, since you don't file your 00 in the current system, you can just come into the new system, file your 00 then. A little bit more about Froy URs. So Froy URs should be submitted on the claims meeting at least one of the following criteria: on all previously submitted claims that have ongoing indemnity, litigation, or rehab. On all previously submitted claims for which a first action, so a first payment, a denial, or partial denial, will need to be filed. All claims submitted to the department within the last 30 days. So any claims where you sent us a first report of injury in the last 30 days, we recommend that you're submitting those URs since there's likely to be additional action. And then also upon request from the department. So upon request from the department would likely just be a letter from our compliance department asking about a UR. Shroy URs. So Shroy URs should be submitted on claims meeting at least one of the following criteria. So it should be on all claims with ongoing indemnity, litigation, or vocational rehab for which a first action has already been submitted. And then also upon request from the department. So in that situation that we were talking about where you've got this claim, you filed something with the department, let's say last week, and now you're not going to be able to file your NOPLD equivalent until next week. You're still gathering some information. Well, we're not going to be accepting them the whole next week. So what you would do, come into the system on day one, you could fill out your Froy UR, and then you could just do your NOPLD equivalent right off the bat. You would not need a Shroy UR. So I know that this is very confusing. um, UR stands for update report, and I apologize. I should have elaborated on that a little bit. But any questions about these URs before we move on and I show you how they populate in this new system? I see there were some questions about how to get help or the best way to get help if you need it while you are working through these claims. I'm going to consult with my compliance department after this, and we'll get you the correct contact information and we'll get you the help desk information as well, just so you can reach out to us if you have questions. All right. I'm going to go ahead then and actually show you guys what it looks like to file a UR. So I'm not actually going to file the UR, but I want to show you what happens when I pull the information through. So I can go ahead and click this familiar button now, the Submit eForm or Web Form. Click my drop down. And I'm going to go all the way to the bottom here and click Submit and Update Report. It's going to give me this modal that asks for these pieces of information. So the campus file number, that's the jurisdiction claim number. For those of you who are more familiar with EDI terms, it's the jurisdiction claim number. It's just the number that is assigned by Minnesota when we get these files in. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that. You don't need to worry about entering that CL. It will just automatically populate for you. The WID, the worker ID number, that's another number that we generate and send back to you all that's specific to the employee. Go ahead and enter that. And then the date of injury. Now, just a second here. Oh, I put the wrong date of injury in, that's why. So you saw there that that's what happens if it doesn't match the criteria. It'll tell you that we didn't have a matching claim. Since I did have a matching claim, it'll bring me back to this eFroy page. But instead of a blank eFroy page, it is going to populate with the information that I have in the system already, that DLI has for this file. Apologies here just for this little bit of delay. All right, there we are. So now you can see all this information already belonged to an existing claim in our system. Really not much that I need to update. I could add different pieces of information. I could update the claim rep information if needed, but for the most part, a lot of you probably will not need to do much updating of these. So since I don't want to submit an update report on this one specifically, I am actually going to go ahead and click Save as Draft. Save as Draft is great, specifically when you're dealing with these eForms because so much information goes into them. And if you save something as a draft, you can go back to your My Forms tab and it'll be sitting right here in draft status waiting for you. So if I wanted to, I could just click right back up into this. It would load Dwight's claim again, and I could just keep working on it until I was ready to submit it or save it as a draft again. All right. So getting to the next piece, supplemental web forms and document generation. So we have talked through document generation a little bit here, but I also want to show you all the supplemental web forms. So here is kind of an overview of our supplemental web forms, and this can also be found on the bottom of that form to MTC crosswalk document. So the dependency web form, you're going to want to file that on claims with ongoing dependency benefits, just provides dependent information. It can be filed when information changes or upon request from the department. So instances of when you might need to log in and make an update are like someone graduates college and they are no longer a student. They cease to be a dependent. That might be an example. So you can always just come and update that whenever needed. PPD follow-up web form. This is filed on claims of PPD benefits. There's no sequencing with this. It can be filed before or after a PY is submitted via eForm, but it just gives us some supplemental information about those PPD benefits that you are paying. Benefit addendum. This would only be filed at the request of the department. This is just a form that we may ask you to fill out if for some reason it becomes unclear how your benefits are laid out, or it looks like there might have been a mistake in how they were paid. Discontinuance web form, filed when benefits are discontinued for reasons other than return to work. We frequently refer to this as a NOID 3 situation. So if you guys are familiar with NOID 3s, the reason being you're cutting off benefits for something that has nothing to do with them returning to work. It's not your standard discontinuance. You do have to do a supplemental web form on those only. You would still submit your suspension through the eForms, but you do need to come in and fill out this supplementary web form as well. In that link that I sent you, I did point out the Minnesota implementation guide. This on pages 7 and 8 specifically has instructions for what documents are generated by the system based on EDI filings, and then what needs to be sent to the employee and or served to the employee. There's a whole table. And then I also want to show you how to navigate to these eForms. We're going to fill a couple of them out, and I'm going to show you where those documents are that you'll want to print out. So before I hop back into the system here, I just had another question. To be clear, all our existing claims we will need to enter. So you only need to submit URs for claims that meet that specific criteria that we outlined in the presentation earlier. So you wouldn't need to do it on every existing claim. It would only be if something is happening which makes the claim reportable to the department. And then you do not need to data enter everything. As long as you have your WID, JCN, or campus file number and the date of injury, it should populate that information for you. Hopefully that answers your question, Kelly. If you have additional questions, please feel free to send them over. All right. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go back into this claim for Aubrey. If you guys remember, we did a suspension for reasons other than return to work. So since we did that, we need to submit our discontinuance web form. So to do that, I'll click this button that says Submit eFroy/web form. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom to these web forms and click the discontinuance web form. Now this is going to populate with most of the information that you need. It's going to pull the employee information, employer information, claim admin claim number. Really all you need to do is indicate the benefits that are being discontinued We do need to know the date that you served it on the employee or the date you will be serving it on the employee. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm going to serve this tomorrow on the employee. There's an attorney. You also need to make sure that the attorney is being served as well. You need to indicate the date that payment will be made through. So in Minnesota, we expect that payment date to be the same as the date that this was served on the employee. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click or put 8/21/2020. Explain why benefits are being discontinued. This, I believe, only holds 500 characters. However, you can always upload supporting documentation or attachments if you need more narrative space. So I'm just going to say, employee was offered light duty work, declined offer. In the real world, you would want to be a little bit more descriptive than that, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to go ahead and put that simple explanation here. Again, I can add some supporting attachments if I want. So if I wanted to, let's say, upload the document that I had sent to the employee where she signed declining the light duty job offer, or upload the medical records that supported the employee's ability to return to work with restrictions, I could do that right here. Now, since this does need to be legally served, we have a few different options. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to serve it on the employer. Since they're male, I'm going to choose a date that I'm going to serve it on them. So I'm going to say that I'm going to serve it tomorrow. This date can be up to 7 days in the future. I'm also going to go ahead and click insurer. You may or may not serve it on the insurer in these situations, but I just wanted to show you all how this works. So you'll notice here we have a couple different service process designees for Twin Lakes Insurance. So since we are both service of process designees, we'll receive it via email, electronic service. Once we click Twin Lakes Insurance, it will automatically select both Rose and myself. I'll choose a date for the mail service on this one. And then we see here we don't have, we do have to serve the employee, but we don't have an email address for the employee. So we're going to need to choose a date for the employee as well. Now, it's very, very important that you have all of your dates straight on these affidavit of service, especially with these discontinuance web forms, because compliance, I was a compliance officer. I promise you that if your dates don't all match up, we are going to send you a letter and demand that you pay through the service date. Once you're done with that, you can click this declaration. You're going to electronically sign the document. And then attest to signing the document. This is one where you can preview it and save it as a draft as well, but since we've got it all submitted, I'm just going to go ahead and click submit. And it's just going to go ahead and take this through the service process. So now if I view this document, I'm going to click this link to view my document. We're going to see a couple things. We're going to see the actual information, the NOID that was created. We're going to see the information for the claim rep. We're going to see all the instructions that usually accompany a NOID. And then if we scroll way down to the bottom here, we're going to have the admin conference information. The request is put right along with it. We scroll way down to the bottom, we'll see that an affidavit of service was actually generated and automatically attached to this document. So you can see that Aubrey received it in the mail, Minnesota Boats received it in the mail, and we have electronic service for myself and Rose Scott. Now, at this point, if you need to serve those offline parties, you can go ahead and print it or download it. You are also going to have this little card over here. This is going to be your address labels for those that you have to serve offline. So I click View Details. You'll see that it created address labels. So it looks like we might have a defect on those that it's not pulling through the recipient name, but it will pull through the recipient name. Okay. Few questions here before we move on. What populates into the Froy URs? The Froy URs would be exactly the same as the Froy URs. It would be whatever data was migrated into our system from the old system to our previous system. You will want to make sure your benefits are up to date. That is going to be a really big one for Froy URs. But it's very similar to the Froy UR, where it just pulls most of that information. Question here, does the electronic signature have to be from the adjuster, or can it be from someone on behalf of the adjuster? That is a really good question. I want to take that question away and verify it. I think it can probably be anybody who's submitting the form. However, it would need to be the person signing it, needs to be the person signing it. It can't be like Lisa, I couldn't, or Susan, I apologize. Susan, I shouldn't be logging in and then signing a document as you. You should be the only person signing in for you, if that makes sense. But I will follow up on who can submit. All right. Will there be an email generated to show that the form is processed? That is a really good question. I will show you that actually right now. Let me get into my other test account here, and I apologize. This is an account I use for a lot of different accounts, so there might be quite a bit of email. But you can see here, we've got our form submission confirmation, notice of intention to discontinue benefits for this claim. And you could go ahead and click through right here to your form history. And it'll be right there. All right. The last one I do want to show you all is the PPD web form. I just want to make sure that we hit on that one because I know that is very important for you all as well. You'll probably all be doing a lot of that. So I'm going to go ahead and select that for Aubrey. So you'll see here, this is very minimal. Most of the information you're going to send to us on PPD is going to be on the actual eForm itself. But we do have a few pieces of information that we can't gather on that eForm, so we just need to get them on the supplemental web form. I'm just going to go ahead and fill this out, 5%. I know that Mike Ireland is on the call right now. He's our PPD guru, and he is going to judge me for not having a real schedule number. But haven't done this for a little bit, so my apologies, Mike. Benefit amount, just go ahead and put $1,500. The rating information, this could be based on a medical report or a preliminary rating. I'm going to go ahead and say it's based on a medical report. I'm going to say it's from Dr. Again, medical report date. Received by insurer, date, payment type. So I'm going to specify if I'm making a lump sum of this PPD or periodic payments. I'm just going to go ahead and say that I'm doing a lump sum. Say that I'm going to make that lump sum payment today. that the employee already signed off on that today. And then I'm going to pay all $1,500 today. If for some reason I'm reducing that lump sum payment, so if for some reason my number here does not match my number here, I have to outline it. So either 20% being withheld for attorney's fees, 20% being withheld because of an overpayment. If it's other, you can give the reason. So you could say, if you're taking like a present day value reduction, you could do that here. Just put my name and phone number. Upload any supporting documentation that might be applicable. So if I wanted to upload like the healthcare provider report right here, I could. Any other supplemental information can be here as well. And then I can submit that form. Same thing, I'm going to get an email showing me that that form has been processed. When I go to my form history, I will be able to see it. I think the easiest way though is to just click on your JCN if you can figure that out or if you know it. That takes you right to this claim. And again, we scroll to the bottom here, go to our documents, and now we see we've got another PPD report that was generated for what we just did. All right, I see that we've got just a couple general questions and I might need to tap into my compliance folks for some help with this, but why would an employee need to approve a lump sum payment? Do we need to show documentation of the employee for the lump sum? Mike, it looks like you might have made a comment, but if you want to speak up to that, feel free.
Yeah, we don't really care if there's not a discount application. If you're taking that 5% present value discount, then you have to have it authorized by the injured worker. But if you're just going to pay the whole thing, we don't really care. It's prepaying more or less, but there's no penalties for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks, Mike. So another question. So just that I'm clear, we will need to file a UR for all open claims that are on file at DLI once the system goes live, correct? Yes, so if it's a claim that is open and reportable, you will need to do the Froy UR, and then you will need to do the Froy UR if there's already been a first action on that claim. But like I showed before, that is not going to be nearly as daunting as that first example that I showed you where you were typing in all the information, because you will 90% of the information is just going to pull for you once you identify your claim. So I'm going to switch to this slide, but we've still got, I think, 30 minutes here. So just to gauge interest, would anybody like to see the other supplemental web forms, or are there any other questions or any other functionality you all are curious about? All right, not seeing anything. Anybody from the DLI side, anything else you think would potentially be helpful to show these folks?
No, but for those who aren't looking in the chat, we did put the link in there for the training materials. So where you can go to sign up for more training and also see the materials. I'll make note that there's a technical manual there it's a PDF that you can look at that has some good information on campus as well.
Mm-hmm. And then there was one question here, will we be supplied with a JCN list? I think we could certainly give you a list of your open files. I need to check with compliance to see what their capabilities are for doing something like that. But that would need to be upon request. I don't believe that we're planning on just sending JCN lists out to anybody without some sort of request. So if you want something like that, or if you need a JCN list, you may send a request to this email, this dli.wcmp@state.mn.us, and we'll get you to the right people. I'm not super familiar with compliance's reports, so they may or may not be able to do that. We would just need to see if they have the capacity to do that.
And do keep in mind that any of the claims that you have submitted in the last number of years, for sure, with if you've been an eFroy submitter already, or if you were EDI and are now moving to eFroy, you have the JCN. It came back in all of the acknowledgments. So that is something that you do have as well.
Great point, Melissa. Yeah, so if you need a list of all the JCNs, that's definitely something we can look into. But yes, as Melissa pointed out, you would have those JCNs if you submitted them to the department. All right, any other questions? Otherwise, I will wrap up a little early and give you all some time back. Oh, it looks like there is one more question. We need to go into campus and enter any and all indemnity files that are on record with our office to date. If so, how long do we have to enter these files? Okay, so you wouldn't need to do every single indemnity file to date. It would just be files that have activity going on with the state. So like if it's like a lifetime medical claim, the indemnity's been settled out forever, all you're doing is paying medicals on that file and it's still open. That's not something that you would be reporting to us currently, so it's not something that you would need to come in and do a UR filing on. As far as a time frame, I don't believe that we have set any deadline for when these URs have to be completed. You can complete them at any point. It's just important to know that if you are going to be filing another Troy after filing a UR on one of these claims, that you do have to have those URs in place first. So I would definitely recommend kind of prioritizing your work. If you have some where maybe you're paying benefits, but all you really need to report is your SA, maybe those URs can be a little bit closer to the bottom of your list. If it's something where you need to file a NOID 3, you need to file a suspension right away, definitely going to want to put those a little higher up on your UR list. So it's not all the claims, it's only claims with the active litigation, rehab, or indemnity. Otherwise, if a claim becomes active, you would just need to file those URs before you do whatever is next. And I will absolutely send this slide deck out after, and I will let you all know once this recording is up and available for viewing. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you all so much for taking the time to attend this training today. As I mentioned, please just reach out with any other questions to this dli.wcmp@state.mn.us email. We will, apologies for that. We always monitor that and we'll get it to the correct people. Thank you all and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Angie.